Welcome back. Today we're starting a 10 to 12 piece series on all things whiting feather. So we're starting out with the flagship line of everything that has to do with dry fly. And as you can see here, I've got a couple, 3 dry flies. I've got something that's kind of a lost thing in our business. I was over at the fly bins trying to grab a couple of these, and I realized we carry almost no traditionally hackled flies. Everything's gone to, this is a traditionally hackled fly. It's a little black quill I did for myself, but the hackle's wrapped around the hook this way. Then the parachute has completely taken over the world of dry flies. You see it's wrapped around here, and this one over here, this little stimmy's got, palmered hackle in the back, and this got another palmered hackle in the front, still traditional style. And then of course you've got your stacker style, this one here where the hair is stacked on top and pulled over. But the bottom line to the hackle is that it is simply a flotation device, and it's intended to set into the water, float the fly, and give the silhouette or the impression of legs. Nothing more, nothing less. And so what I want to go through is we're going to go through this in a series of things. I'm just going to show you how we're grade here and what makes these things what they are. And then we're going to go through a grading process. That will be separate, completely separate videos. There'll be a grading and then the color stuff. But to start with, because there's a lot of confusion about this when you get into the necks proper and the saddles, because a lot of people think there's a whole different, there are different uses. And in the whiting series here, there's 4 lines of hackle in the whiting line. And so you've got your red label, and that's where a lot of confusion comes in. Like it's a different bird or something. It is a different bird, but it's for a different use, and it's not. These are all dry fly hackles. So we go red label, we got Hebert Minor, then we've got the new one, which is the Heritage, and then you've got their commercial line, which is kind of the bottom of the line, which is, the hackle is still phenomenal, but this one's not graded. So anyway, that's the high and dry. But what I want you to understand is just the basics to dry fly hackle. And it's made to wrap around the hook and suspend your fly on the surface so your fly doesn't sink. And so you've basically, I'm going to start on my right, your left, in the series of the red label. It's pretty simple, red label. Up here, and you've got basically 3 styles there. They've eliminated gold. And we used to have 4, and you can still see it out there in the world. You'll hear about gold label or gold grade. They don't do it anymore because the hackle has all become so good. It's very hard to get one it's very hard to grade any of them, but we're going to go through that grading thing later. And so you start silver, bronze, and pro grade. Pro grade is going to be cut down to 2 colors, I believe, very shortly. So basic, you're going to end up with 2. But you have saddles. This is the opposite end of the birds, right? So when you hear cape, or frequently hear cape or pelt, but cape means it's the top of the bird. So it's where the neck, where the feathers come around the cheeks and go down its shoulders. And that's this part right here. There's the this is cut around the cheeks, and these necks are trimmed out to be shaped like this. So they're trimmed out. And so this is the neck, and then the shoulders of the bird. And when you get to the saddle, that's the hind end of the bird. This is, if it had a tail sticking out, it'd be right here. This is just the rump, right where it rolls against its back, and that's the saddle. That hangs off to the side. And so if you look at a picture, you'll see it's right where the tail, right in front of the tail, and they just hang down. That's why these are so long. The birds are tall, and they can hang down without dragging. But every one of these, from the entire series, they aren't matching sets, but you can get the saddle or the cape. And so you've got 3 grades there. You go into the Hebert Minor, same thing, 3 grades. And again, 3 grades of the saddle. Then you go into the neck of the Heritage. This one does not have grades per se. We have 2 price points that is completely on color. Has nothing to do, the neck is the neck, and they're basically 1 grade. But if it's a unique color, because that's what these come out with, some really crazy colors, it prices it up. And lastly, you've got the high and dry. And to my way of thinking, this is probably the best value in the entire market. These are not graded for anything at all. They're the line, but the line is so incredibly good that these were made for the tying houses, right? These were made for like Montana Fly and Umpqua and there are other companies like that buy big bulk lots, and this was just the byproduct. So that is a single, no grading. These are 3 grades, 2 grades kind of. And so what I want you to understand is that there's basically everything in here is about suspension of your fly. And they come in multiple colors. We're going to get to that later. And now after you understand that these all have a function, right? They're all dry fly hackle, but the function is to suspend the fly, and that's where it gets kind of confusing. So when you take this feather here, this neck, it has multiple sizes of feathers. And this is basically all you need to know about dry fly hackle. It has multiple sizes feathers through here. And so you'll have 24s up here, and you might get down into here, maybe even get a 8 or a 10. In the old days, when you got down here, you'd be into size 4s and 2s. But because of the way they've started to develop these through the genetic engineering process that Tom Whiting, Dr. Whiting, they've become so consistent that there's very few big feathers. So, if you're, especially for beginner tires, I always encourage people to start with necks, not with saddles, and I'll go through that in just a second. But this gives you a diversity of feather sizes. So you could go from 24 to, I would say 10's about as big as you're going to get out of these anymore. And there's going to be a lot of them. The feathers are really long. Even on the lower grades, they're really long. You can see that. So you're going to get multiple flies out of each feather. Maybe in some of these you might get as many as 5 flies out of one feather. And so and there's a lot of confusion with that because people think that kind of the opposite. At least when I'm fielding phone calls, people think they're getting a lot of sizes when they get in their saddles. Just the opposite. When you get into these saddles, now the feathers are incredibly long, right? But there's not much diversity in the size. These are generally, you generally figure that these have 2 sizes, say 14-16 or 14-12. It's going to be generally in the bigger sizes until you get into what's called the midge saddles. But again, still 2 sizes. This might have 16s and 18s in it. One thing you're going to see very, very infrequent is to see a size 20 in a saddle. It's really hard to come by. This one's got a couple in it, but not very many. And again, it has to do with the grading, which we're going to get into, all of that. But just as a beginning, on the onset, when we start this, I just want you to understand that there's grades of these, and there's styles or lines. And so Red Label, Hebert Minor, Heritage, and then the high and dry, every single one of them has a saddle. So if you know you're going to tie a lot of one size fly, say a 14 or 16, saddles are an incredible value. But if you want to have a diversity and be able to do a whole bunch of stuff, I would always suggest you start with the capes. So in the next one that we do, we're going to go right into grading. And that one's going to be showing you what makes the grade, how you got from a silver to a pro grade, or how you got into this, into the other styles. But we're going to show you everything that we can show you about what makes the quality of the feather. Hope you like it. Hope it helps you out.